I really appreciate this opportunity to share my thoughts on the dawn of human spirituality. Since retiring in 2016 and since the pandemic, I really don't speak that often. And so when Bob asked us to consider talking about the spirituality of yoga, I really got excited about the idea of thinking about the dawn of human spirituality. But let me begin first by clarifying that I'm not an expert on human spirituality, but looking back, wanting to understand life and death, I think have deeply motivated the path my life has taken. My Kibei parents, Kibei means those who were born here but raised in Japan, then returned to the United States. My parents did this. They were born here, raised in Japan, and returned to the U.S. before the war. Well, my Kibei parents, they sent me to Japanese school from, this is the mid-1950s, and I went every day after school from the age of 6. And when I was only 7, I remember our Kinmon Gakuen Japanese school principal, Suzuki Sensei, died very suddenly. I was so afraid of this man. I mean, he was so stern. He would carry this big stick, and in class, he'd pound the desk, and when he would get angry, his face would turn red, and I was just so fearful of this man. And when he passed away, our family respectfully attended Suzuki Sensei's funeral, and that was the first funeral that I ever remembered attending. And I recall the complete disbelief I felt when I saw him there, lying in the coffin, unmoving. And I vividly remember standing there staring at him as a 7-year-old, just waiting for him to sit up. That was, I think, the first time I felt also the combined grief of hundreds of people all around me. And my young mind wondered, what's going on here? Looking back, and I felt this now for many decades, I feel that that moment awakened within me both a growing wonderment about life and also a fear of death. And as I've reflected back on my life, because of that experience, there was a hope within me that someday I would be able to understand life and death. So, Patti has long said to me, Bob, you're always trying to find the easy way to do things. And I think that's true even here with approaching life, because I really thought that if I could understand death, then life would be easy, And to me, understanding life and death is at the heart of what is spirituality, wanting to understand life and death. I feel we are all on a journey to connect with our human spirituality. And I've come to feel that as human beings evolved, so too did our curiosity and our spirituality. I've come to feel that all the religions and mythologies and even folk tales are rooted in humanity's desire to understand life and come to terms with death. And to also understand this ever-changing world that we're living in. For some of you, you may have received this really kind of one-page handout. And I'm not going to refer to this, but I'll tell you what it is. It's a very brief history of humanity, half a page, from the Earth forming 4.6 million years ago to when humanity first began to have, I feel, a sense of consciousness. And half a page of brief overview of world religions from Hinduism over 5,000 years ago, the Egyptian pyramids through Buddhism and Christianity and Islam and Greek mythologies. And it's just kind of a timeline. I'm not really referring to that. Just wanted to send it out because this is the backdrop of what we want to try to share today. The movie 2001, A Space Odyssey, that some of you may remember, first premiered when I was in college. in 1968. At that time, the year 2001 seemed like the distant future. And thinking about that now gives me a kind of what in in Jodo Shinshu we might call the three treasures-like feeling. Hard was it once to imagine the year 2001, and now we've long passed it. So that movie, for those of you who may have not seen it, depicted the journey of humanity from the apes to man in space. The transition of humankind's movement from the first making of crude tools and weapons to the evolution of space travel. When our friend and yoga teacher Bob Matsueda first mentioned having this discussion on the Dharma and yoga, on Buddhism and yoga, I thought, well, since this is the first gathering, let's consider going back further than the Greco-Roman mythologies or when Muhammad lived 1,500 years ago, further than the time of Jesus 2,000 years ago, back further than the Enlightenment age of the Taoist, Confucian, and Buddhist thought 2,600 years ago, and back even further than the deep spirituality found in the Hindu Vedas over 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. Tonight, I'd like us to consider for a moment the dawn of human consciousness, when early human beings first began to have a sense of existence, simply realizing, I am, I exist, I'm here. With consciousness arose the questions that come with self-awareness. Who am I? What is life? What is the purpose of my existence? To me, these are all questions that help humanity awaken their sense of spirituality. Looking out at the world, our early ancestors could not help but wonder, what's it all about? How did all that I see in this world around me come to be? I took one anthropology class in college, but I realized early on that it was a significant class to me, and it really helped to shape my unconscious spiritual search. In this anthropology class on the myths and folk tales of humanity, we were introduced to folk tales and stories of what anthropologists call creation myths, from tribal cultures in the Americas and Africa to the mythologies and religions of the world. And there was a common theme running through them all. And it was fascinating to just see in one class through the quarter how similar they were in trying to explain this wonderment we're a part of. I still recall the professor said that the creation stories were rooted in what he called efficacy, right? That's pretty interesting. So let me explain. When humanity began to make things, when human beings first began to form crude tools and weapons about 2 million years ago, according to the archaeologists, to even later on making more refined hunting spears and tips with arrows and even jewelry with seashells. They found holes in them where they'd be strung together to make a necklace. And with the advent of making fire to make pottery and bowls, and the first calendars about 10,000 years ago. So when humanity began to make things with a purpose in mind, the question of efficacy naturally arose, and it would be this: if I make things, then what made me? What made me? And if I create things, then what created me? If I make things for a purpose, then what is my purpose in life? What is the reason for me being here? Why am I here? And I know when he talked about this efficacy, to me, it was an awakening. To help us, the mythologies and the religions, the creation myths, the creation stories, they all help us try to grasp the mystery of life and to give us a sense of order and understanding in a world, in a universe that seems to have none. We human beings needed to create our explanations. And I've come to feel as Joseph Campbell felt, that some of you may know Joseph Campbell. He passed away in about 1986 or 7, but he was clearly one of the leading authorities on the religions and myths of humanity, and just a remarkable man. But I've come to feel that as he felt, that all the religions of humanity that have ever existed, whether a tribal folktale or a great world religion with millions of followers, they chronicle humanity's attempts to come to terms with the unknown, to come to terms with life and death. Consider the beautiful and intricate mythologies of India with Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and my favorite, Krishna, that influence the Greco-Roman myths creating Zeus, Apollo, the Fates, Poseidon, which then influenced the Nordic mythologies with Odin, Thor, and Loki. It's amazing. There was so much then that was just completely unknown. Our human ancestors saw lightning and heard thunder, and they no doubt felt fear and awe. Having created stories of why these things are with our myths, and it's so much easier then to feel comfortable around all of these unexplainable phenomena. We could be more at ease. When lightning flashes and thunder clashes, the Greeks would say, well, Zeus is angry, and they would feel much more comfortable. Now, even now, there is much that we do not know. Scientifically, we know what causes lightning and thunder, but still, there is so much that is unknown. And in this time of great knowledge, there's still so much that cannot be known. The journey of humankind to self-awareness has been the journey to awaken our human spirituality. And it is a journey we have each lived, and a journey that we share with all of humanity throughout time, throughout the thousands, hundreds of thousands, and even millions of years. From the beginning of human consciousness, when our ancestors first made crude stone tools about 2 million years ago, I can imagine them asking, I made this stone axe for a reason, so what made me, and for what purpose? And each time we have asked ourselves quietly, who am I? Who am I now? And what is life? What is the purpose of my existence? Why do things happen as they do? Our questions awaken our human spirituality, and I feel our wonderments connect us directly to the dawn of that first sense of awareness, that first wonderment that would be the dawn of human spirituality. The philosopher Pascal said 400 years ago, human beings, we are thinking reeds. We are life aware of itself. We are life aware of itself. I've always felt that this is just amazing just to think about that. We are life aware of itself. We are finite beings with short lifespans, and yet we can conceive of something called the infinite. That's amazing. The spirituality of humanity has always been trying to grapple with and understand these great mysteries. So I know that we have a brief amount of time, so I try to really consolidate this. And what really has always inspired me, I think, and I met to Bob when we first talked about doing this. I said, what came to mind for me immediately was the beautiful ancient song, the Song of Creation. And I'd like to share this with kind of before we open it up for questions. I first read the Song of Creation now 51 years ago. I got this book in 1970, the Bhagavad Gita. And it was in the preface of the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, that the Song of Creation was shared. And it remains and to this day a great inspiration to me. The fact that I have kept this book for 51 years. Patti actually looked it up online, and this hardcover Bhagavad Gita that I have, that I think I probably paid like $6 for. She said, "It's how much is it worth? $500 now." That's pretty good investment. But I kept it because this is such an inspirational book, and this poem is one that I love to share. So let me share the beautiful ancient song, the Song of Creation, that was created over 4,000 years ago. And it captures so much. There's only 6 stanzas. It's not that long. But let me explain them a little before I read it, the stanzas. The first 3 stanzas are trying to describe the unknowable, the mysterious nothingness from which all things come. In Buddhism, it might be called sunyata. But regardless of any words that we may use to describe it, the unknowable is beyond all thought or comprehension. It is just beyond. And here's how the poets of the Vedas shared this. They did a great job. This is how they describe the unknowable. There was not then what is nor what is not. There was no sky, no heaven beyond the sky. What power was there? Where? Who was that power? Was there an abyss or a fathomless water? There was neither death nor immortality then. No signs were there of night or day. The one was breathing by its own power in deep peace. Only the one was. There was nothing beyond. Darkness was hidden in darkness, and all was fluid and formless. Therein, in the void, by the fire of fervor arose the one. Right? Isn't that amazing? That's just describing that which is beyond, that cannot be described. And then comes the 4th stanza. The beauty of the 4th stanza is that from this incomprehensible nothingness, this void, the most powerful feeling emerges. And the 4th stanza starts. In the one arose love. Love, the first seed of soul. The truth of this the sages found in their hearts, seeking it in their hearts with wisdom. The sages found that bond of union between being and non-being. So, in this 4th stanza, this powerful feeling of love emerges. And in the one arose love. Love, the first seed of soul, the first seed of being. Love is what the sages found to be the bond between being and not being. Sometimes we've heard people nowadays say, love is stronger than death. Love is stronger than death. Love is the bond between being and non-being. So it's amazing. The amazing thing now about the 5th stanza is the honest question, who knows in truth how this mysterious universe and life and love all came to be? In this stanza, the poets of the Vedas understood that the gods came after the beginning of the universe, however it may have begun. So who knows whence comes this creation? And so this is the 5th stanza. Who knows in truth? Who can tell us whence and how arose this universe? The gods are later than its beginning. Who knows, therefore, whence comes this creation? And this is followed by, I think, the best response to this question of, how did it all begin? In the last stanza, who knows how all this began? And the last stanza reads, only that God who sees in highest heaven, he only knows whence comes this universe and whether it was made or uncreated. He only knows. Or perhaps he knows not. I love that, huh? Only he knows. Or maybe not. Maybe not. When I first read the Song of Creation 51 years ago, I laughed with relief. Here was a song of a true seeker whose spirituality was alive and real. And I was relieved to know I was not alone. I was not the only one. I was wondering the same thing the poets of the Vedas wondered over 4 millennia ago. It was encouragement for me to never stop wondering and doubting and keep questioning and learning. And I've come to feel that when our attachments to any ism becomes too self-righteous, we begin to diminish our human spirituality. Yeah. So with that, I'd like to open it up for some questions. Any thoughts or questions on just considering the beginning, the dawn of human spirituality? Or any questions at all. We don't have to limit it to that. I'm trying to make sure I'm keeping with our time limits.
Time's up here.
Oh,
Yes, right there.
oh, thank you. Very, very tech savvy I am, huh? So any thoughts or questions? No? Okay. Well, after retirement for 4 years, Patti and I served 2 terms as the chaplains for the California State Assembly. And it was a great honor to be invited to serve in this capacity and to try to share the Dharma on this the stage with all of the legislatures in attendance. And we've been able to meet some fun people along the way. We met, who was the CHIPS guy? Eric Estrada.
Yeah, Eric Estrada.
And Cheech Marino. Yeah, it was a lot. It was fun. We met a lot of different, and we met the Dalai Lama, which was really a great honor. But in our openings of the floor sessions, we would try to create hopefully inspirational reflections. Since in Buddhism there really is no prayer, because we're not praying to anything. A reflection is really the closest we could come. So maybe, Patti, would you like to share a reflection first?
All righty.
Okay.
So we would begin every session carrying our little inking, our little bell. And there was actually the members really kind of got used to that. They always asked us, "Did you bring the bell today?" We said, "Yeah, of course, we always hold the bell." But I think it also represented a moment of, quiet, inner thought, something that they can reflect upon. And so we would begin every reflection with the ringing of the inking. So I would say, please join me in a moment of reflection. During the summer break, we like to recommend intentionally creating completely unscheduled moments, perhaps even a whole day or 2. Such unscheduled time is known to help with our mental and emotional well-being. Let's create time to be with people so close that we can be comfortable together in silence. Maybe carve out a long moment with no agenda or list of things to do. Some of the fondest memories my husband Bob and I have are when we have meandered through unscheduled days with no destination and no agenda. Our lives become open to discovering new places, interesting people, and unique shops and restaurants. We've done this in many places we've traveled in the world, and it has always proved to be a relaxing adventure. Spending an entire day with someone so close that we can be together in silence reminds us to not take for granted our special friendship. With less talk and more laughter, we quietly remember again what is really of value in life. It's not the things we own or possess that gives meaning to our lives. It will always be the people we love that give meaning and purpose to each day. So during the summer break ahead, let's all try to create completely unscheduled moments to be with family and dear friends. Such unscheduled time will help us to remember again what is really of value in living each day. And then we would close with Namo Amida Butsu, with kindness and gratitude beyond words.
We didn't discuss I was hoping she would do that one. Yes.
So there's a lot of people who just joined in late, but if you want to put your cursor on Reverend Bob and Reverend Patty's picture, there's a push pin there. You push that little icon of a push pin and they take up the whole screen there. So if you'd like to do that. And we have a question in the chat from Kathy, and she asked, do you recommend any books about Hinduism that you might recommend? And while you're thinking about that, my question is related to that. We know that you read from the Rig Veda that historically Shakyamuni Buddha was raised as a Hindu, and he studied the Vedas, which really is passed down its knowledge from the time that you were reading. The Bhagavad Gita is a part of that, the knowledge passed on for generations. But for you two, a question for both of you as Buddhist ministers, what is the influence of Hinduism and the practice of yoga, for instance, as it relates to both of you, and why you're interested in this? Because we rarely hear about, outside of Buddhism, and we're caught into this whole thing of, Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, or, this branch of Buddhism, this is it, but we rarely hear about the influence. And Shakyamuni Buddha was a Hindu, and there are a lot of things that influence them. So can you maybe speak on that, maybe?
Yeah, that's often just overlooked, but it plays such a significant role in the evolution of Buddhism that the Siddhartha, who would become the Shakyamuni Buddha after enlightenment, he grew up completely steeped in the Hindu tradition. He was raised with all of the participating in all of the teachings and rituals of Hinduism. And it's such a rich tradition. There's so much going on. When people have asked me about wanting to know, understand more deeply the human spirituality, I would suggest, first of all, study Hinduism. I mean, it has 5,000 years of humanity trying to come to terms with life and death, and the mystery of the universe, and the Song of Creation really indicates that 4,000 years ago they were aware that having questions and doubts are essential to having real spiritual life. Blind faith has nothing to do with being really, really involved in having a meaningful spiritual personal journey. So, getting back to the influence of Hinduism on Buddhism, there's so many positives, like the teaching of karma, that Hinduism has long taught, but the Buddha took it and modified it and made it a little simple, where previous causes and conditions create the moment that is now, and what we do and do not do now, and the events of the moment now will go on to create the future. And in a way, also Hinduism has a beautiful creation myth, and it's so intricate, and it's one of my favorites, but I won't go into it. But it also understands that, as we shared in the Song of Creation, how everything began, we don't know. All we know is it obviously worked. No one could really know. And that's what was in the Vedas that I really appreciated. It cannot be known, but it's okay. It's okay. And what Siddhartha did, what the Buddha, how this affected Buddhism is that it's interesting that of the world, the major world religious tradition, Buddhism is the only one without a creation belief. There's no, how did everything begin? Which in a way was one of our discussions with Patti and I and Bob talking about how did everything begin. And it is said during the time of the historical Buddha, over like 2,600 years ago, having now a reputation as a very well-known teacher, the other great teachers of the time, well-known, they gathered and they invited him to engage in debate. And so in this debate, he was asked questions, and to certain questions, questions that were really would be a part of, could easily be a part of our talk today. How did everything begin? How did the world and the universe begin? Is there a soul? Is there an immortal soul? Is the universe finite or infinite? Is the universe finite or infinite? What happens when we die? What happens when we die? And to these kinds of questions, the Buddha remained absolutely silent. He remained silent, and they became known as the great silences. So how did everything begin? Is the world, is the universe finite or infinite? Is there a soul that's immortal? What happens when we die? To say one word, to even try to say yes or no, you have to engage literally in a debate to prove it's true or not. And this is, I think, was really probably the only response that would really have life, is no response. His great silences became quite famous. And, when I contemplated his silences and I imagined him, my imagination of the historical Buddha hearing these questions saying, how did everything begin? Is there a soul? What happens when you die? I can imagine him sitting there thinking, good question. Yeah, that's a good question. But I wish I knew, cannot be known. There are things that can't be known. And so Buddhism has, I think Siddhartha had that wonderful openness that I feel in the Song of Creation that I shared. And when Bob is sharing with us the teachings of yoga, and when we're reading about the yoga tradition, we're finding so many similarities with Buddhism. And we signed up for the teaching class not to teach. There's no way we're teaching. but just so we could learn, because the classes, they're fascinating. Yeah. And so we're enjoying that. But I don't know, does that respond to your question, Bob?
Yeah, no, that's great. And actually, Diane had a follow-up question in the chat. She asked, is the goal of yoga enlightenment? So kind of to expound on Diane's question there, and this is a question for a lot of Buddhists who are kind of like looking at yoga or Hinduism or anything. Is yoga complementary practice to Buddhism? Is it put in a box of being jiriki, self-power kind of a thing, or is this, inconsistent with tariki? Those are the kind of questions that get thrown around when people who are Buddhists start looking at yoga. Is it okay, kind of a thing? So I think, and I'm expanding on Diane's question. So
to me, I've been thinking about yoga as meditation, and Bob used the terms jiriki and tariki, and those are kind of technical Buddhist words for self-effort, self-power, and other power. There's always a kind of a debate. And our sect of Buddhism, Shinshu, they are really into the tariki, other power kind of discussion. But I feel like that's that kind of discussion. That's unnecessary. It's like it should really be one of those black hole questions. I look at certain questions as, I call them black hole questions, because you put all your energy into it, and it's like a black hole. It sucks in your energy and your life and your time, and nothing comes out of it, like a black hole, And so, But when I think of the theme that in Hinduism and Buddhism, in yoga, I feel that yoga is a movement meditation. See, most people think of meditation as just the seated posture, that I'm going to sit and I'm going to meditate. But the seated posture of meditation is your elementary form of meditation. That's how meditation is introduced to the novice. When you enter the temple, they'll have you learn to first sit. Because if they begin teaching you with an activity meditation, it's easy to become distracted. If they begin you with a lying down meditation, then it's easy to fall asleep. And they start you with the seated posture, where you're not moving and yet you're not resting. And so once you understand, how to focus, and I was very fortunate to be introduced to Zazen back, I don't know, now over 50 years ago. Ogui Sensei, who was our past bishop, he was actually my friend and mentor back in the day. When I met him, I was 20 and he was 28, and I thought, wow, he's really a wise old man. But when I began to study with him and he introduced me to meditation, as a Jodo Shinchu minister at the San Francisco temple where he was serving, where I grew up, he sends me to Soto Zen Temple, just down the block, and takes me there, and he introduces me to Katagiri Roshi. And Katagiri Roshi were those who were studying Zen. He went on to become quite well known, but I was fortunate to be introduced to him, and he was my introductory Zazen teacher. And so I would attend sesshin with the novice meditators, and I will never forget that very first meditation session. He sat across from us, showing us how to do the lotus, and if we couldn't do the half lotus position, that we were still young and could kind of bend into those positions, and they were very painful. And he would have us sit and remind us to how to put our chin. I mean, it's very, very, very. The directions are very clear: chin in, tongue touching the roof of your mouth, the back of your teeth, the eyes half closed, looking 6 feet forward, and how to put your hands below your navel, and the whole thing is very clear, the instructions. And we're sitting there in Zazen, and sitting so uncomfortable. And I remember moving and feeling we were supposed to count our breaths 1 to 10 and start over again. But we're so unfocused. Either one or two things happen. I'm sitting there and I'm counting my breaths, and pretty soon it's like 6. Oh, what's that? 7? No, 6. Either that or I forget to stop at 10 and I'm going 93. It was just, it's hard to just count to 10 and go back again. And sitting there, and in the middle of this session when I'm struggling to focus and keep my mind counting breaths and sitting with posture and all these things, Roshi began to speak, and I opened my eyes and I looked at him. And I had to look at him because what he was saying, I thought, no way. Because he looked at us, and then he said, sitting with this perfect zazen posture, he said, all of you, your zazen much better than mine. Huh? That's when I opened my eyes and I said, say what? Huh? He said, your zazen much better than mine. And I thought, yeah, no way. And I said, just look at him. And then he said, you look at me and you think, Katagiri Roshi, his zazen is so beautiful. He sits there like a perfect onigiri, triangle shape. And then he said, but I've been doing this all my life. Sitting zazen for me, it's like sitting in a furo, like a bathtub, so comfortable. And then he said, I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about baseball. Did the Giants win today? I'm thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner later. He says, all kind of thoughts come to my mind and I have to let it go. But I look at you and all of you are trying with all your might. Your spirit is trying so hard to really sit zazen. And then he said, so I say to you, your zazen much better than mine. That was unforgettable. It was a beautiful lesson. And I understood it when I was training Patti and those back in 2003 to go to Tokudo. When I was teaching them to chant in the library, they would chant pretty good. When I got them on the onaijin up on the altar, and I said, okay, I want you to chant Shoshinge. And when they would ring the big bell, the daikin, and then I hear their voices so high and so shaky. Junyo, Murio, Junyo. And as I heard their voices so trying so hard, I understood at that moment what Katagiri Roshi was saying. And when they finished, I told them, your okyo, your chanting, much better than mine. Much better than mine. Because when I'm chanting, I've done it for so long, it's memorized. I'm thinking about other things. So we have to begin with a seated meditation. And once we're that comfortable, as Katagiri Roshi was comfortable thinking about baseball, and is like sitting so comfortably, the goal, as he would say in his own words, Roshi said, we must take our zazen off the zafu. We have to take our meditation and our awareness off of the cushion and into our lives. Take that awareness and live with that awareness. So that takes us to the next step of meditation in action, meditation in activity. And this to me is what yoga is. It's an active meditation where we're becoming aware of our bodies and movement, and we become aware of our surroundings even more. Like unlike seated meditation where you just see 6 feet in front, one spot. So it's a movement towards a little further into making our zazen, our meditation, an active part of our lives. So meditation in action to where everything we say and think and our actions become meditative. So to me, yoga is that step of taking our zazen off the zafu. So I hope you'll feel that connection, that, all of the traditions and the Buddhist teachers would often say all of the Dharma, all of the sutras, they're all just, and this is a proverb that everyone remembers Bruce Lee sharing, Enter the Dragon. So all of them are just fingers pointing to the moon. And the moon is the ineffable experience of living life. And all the traditions, all the isms of the world are just trying to point to the moon, saying, don't look at the finger. Don't be attached to the finger. Look at the moon. Look at your life. Look at the experience of living. So this, to me, is, we're all just isms, just fingers. But don't be attached to the finger. If we do, then we really begin to diminish our spirituality. We become attached to that and say, our finger is better than your finger. Our finger's pointed in the right direction, yours isn't. Yeah. One my teachers, remember, asked us to contemplate, imagine a circle with no circumference. Then the center is everywhere. So wherever you're pointing is the right place. So, yeah, I think let's just try to not be attached to the fingers that are pointing to us trying to become, better at living, which is really the goal, to become better at living, not to become really expert on jiriki tariki. Let's become better at living, become kinder. I was sharing with Bob just, I think the other day, since I don't know what is coming to mind, so I'll talk about it, but after 2001, which has been really in the news last week, after the Twin Towers fell, we were all just devastated. I know, shaken, and we were seeking, something to give us a sense of confidence that, okay, the world's going to be okay. And I was invited to attend a panel and they had like 15, 16 different religious traditions. And I've never been on a panel with that many different traditions. Usually it's 4 or 5 at the most. But to have that many, I said, oh, sounds interesting. So I went. And actually, I went to hear. But when I got there, they said, oh, you're here. Yeah, you're representing the Buddhists. So I was on the panel. And I was placed somewhere within the last 1/3. And so we asked to speak 5 minutes each on our tradition. And all these clergy members, they're not going to speak for 5 minutes. They went on and on. And, after like 5 of them, and it was like, an hour passed, and the moderator asked us to speed it up. And, 2 hours passed, and, this still wasn't getting to me. And I would see people fidgeting, about 200 people there in the audience saying, this is getting kind of long. And all the while, I was unconsciously thinking, okay, how do I explain Buddhism simply? And then as it got longer, I said, okay, how can I say it in just a few sentences? And then as it passed the 2-hour mark, I said, okay, how can I explain Buddhism in 1 sentence to the people here? And finally, when it came to me, and it was already getting kind of long, and I wanted to first put everyone at ease, and I said, I know it's been a long evening, and so I'll keep this very short. And then if you say that, I felt, wow, you'll have their full attention. They won't think, here's another guy that's going to go on and on, as I am now. So after I told him I'll keep this very short, and then I said to the whole entire group, and the audience that if there is a religious tradition in the world that would say, let's get rid of all religion, all traditions, and start over again, and just be good and kind to each other, that would be Buddhism. And I said, that's it. And I handed the mic to the next person. And I was surprised. I received applause. I think they were happy I wasn't talking long. But afterwards, people were coming up and saying, where's your temple? Do you have a card? And I said, oh, no, I don't have any cards. But that's that was interesting that, when we talk about non-attachment, it's even to the tradition itself. It's very, very clear that, no, we don't not be attached to the Dharma or Buddhism. It's a vehicle. It's a vehicle to help us to live better, to live with our eyes open, to live clearly. And that's it. It's really very simple. But for Kathy, your question about what's a good book on Hinduism, wow. Yeah, I would recommend always, the Bhagavad Gita. And this is just one chapter, one part of the Mahabharata, one of the great two Hindu classics. There's the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. I read a condensed version of the Mahabharata. I mean, it's huge. I mean, it would be 18 volumes. But they're just epic and really, I think, capture just the struggle of humanity and coming to terms with who we are and finding value in life. It's quite beautiful. It's an epic and important story for that really, I'm amazed that it was written so long ago. That's such a great message. Okay.